Hi there. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Crystal Wittevrongle, collaborating with Common Sense Calgary, here today with Jeromy Farkas, who is running for mayor in Calgary's 2025 upcoming election. Jeromy, thank you so much for being here with me today.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Crystal.
Wonderful. Well, I'd love to hear about the foundation that you're bringing with you into City Hall.
So the reason I'm in this race is that Calgary is nearing 2 million people, and we need leadership to manage that challenge and growth around safety, around affordability. And the recent polling, the fundraising, everything has shown is that I'm the only one in this race who can do what hasn't been done in 45 years, defeat a sitting mayor. So I'm running for mayor to build a city that's safe, affordable, and ready for the future. A lot of people watching this probably know me. I'll skip the backstory, but I grew up in East Calgary to a newcomer family. I've been blessed to serve our city in countless ways as a community association executive, as a city councillor, a police commissioner, a Rotarian, wilderness first responder, nonprofit director, and CEO. And now I'm stepping forward to stop a political party takeover of city council, to unite Calgarians around a shared vision and help Calgary rise to its full potential.
Well, that's quite the background. And so, what are you hearing are some of the top priorities for Calgarians? You mentioned some of them, but what are the big important things we should be focusing on right now?
Well, most of the time that I've spent with Calgarians has really been about safety and affordability. So hearing a lot about those two issues, but even deeper than that, Calgarians are telling me that they don't feel heard. There's a lack of listening at City Hall, and it's showing up in growing frustrations that people have around affordability, around safety, around neighborhood change. People are really feeling frustrated by rising costs. They're feeling unsafe in public spaces, and they see decisions that are being made at City Hall not very transparently, and also quite disconnected from real life. So the answers to these challenges, whether they're housing, safety, affordability, they already exist out there in the community. So my job as mayor is to bring Calgarians together and to listen to that wisdom of the community so that we can move forward to actually address those safety and financial challenges.
hmm And speaking of financial challenges, property taxes were one of the top concerns when Calgarians were polled recently. What are your thoughts on the current level of property taxes, and what do you intend to do as mayor? Freeze them, increase, decrease,
Yeah, the property taxes are much too high, and this comes up as about by some of the financial mismanagement that we've seen from Sonia Sharp and Jody Gondek. In 2021, when I left Calgary City Council as the vice chair of the audit committee, we were rated at an A minus in our financial transparency, and it was just earlier this year that CD Howe Institute gave us a D plus. So there's been a significant lack of financial responsibility, and property taxes in Calgary, they're not just about the number on the bill, they're also the value for the money. So most Calgarians I talk to, they don't mind paying their fair share if they can see the results. Things like safe streets, the snow cleared on time, potholes being fixed, reliable transit. But the frustration is that Calgarians have been paying more and more every year due to the financial mismanagement of Gondek and Sharp, and we're not seeing the results. So I believe taxes should be fair and predictable, and it's City Hall's first job to spend that money responsibly, to cut waste, deliver quality services before asking families and businesses for more. And look, I put my money where my mouth is. When I served as a city councillor, I declined the city council golden pension. So I very strongly believe in that financial responsibility and accountability, and that's what I'll bring as Calgary's next mayor.
And so would you be in favor of freezing property taxes at current levels until maybe there was some spending considerations reeled in, or what does that look like for you?
Well, I want us to continue to invest in the areas that Calgarians have said important, particularly around crime and public safety, increased physical presence on transit. We have to reopen a downtown police station. I believe that we can hold the line within the municipal control, but I'm reluctant to say a number because the provincial government has telegraphed that they're going to continue to increase their share of the property taxes, right? So even if the city holds the line as we need to, the province and decisions by the UCP could essentially create a property tax increase. So it's misleading for anyone running for office to claim a specific number if the premier is going to be deciding that it's going to be a 5% increase for their portion.
And so then let's look at the other side of the equation, which would be spending. And what are your thoughts on how the city currently spends and what it should do to either get that under control or revisit how it currently spends?
Yeah, no, I think that the increases need to be less than the combined rate of inflation and population growth. Over the next 4 years, Calgary is going to reach 2 million people, and we need to ensure that we're addressing essential infrastructure and safety demands. I think if we can pair this discipline with addressing real economic development to attract businesses, broaden our tax base, we can fund the services and infrastructure that a bigger city needs without forcing Calgarians to shoulder bigger tax increases. So for me, it's very much about smarter growth, doing more of what we have, keeping Calgary affordable, and building confidence in City Hall's ability to manage a growing city.
Mm-hmm. And so then with spending, like you would kind of keep it level with the growth and property tax rates or
Yeah, that
candidates?
needs to be a ceiling, right? So when we think
Yeah.
about over the last 4 years, we had 300,000 brand new Calgarians come to the city. Many of them, just like my dad, who came as a refugee, they didn't come with a library book or a swimming pool or a fire truck or police station or all of the infrastructure that we need, right? So that we know, for example, right sizing the pop to cop ratio has to
Mm-hmm.
be a big priority for this next council. So we can do more to broaden the tax base to be able to also ensure that we're driving better efficiency with that spending, right? We have to ensure that all the money that's being sent to City Hall is being spent responsibly and that there's the accountability for that as well.
Mm-hmm. And so when it comes to spending, in recent years, there's been some pet projects that some folks claim or spending that is being seen as outside the scope of what city council should really be focused on or the mayor should be focused on. In your view, what is the core role for the mayor and for city council to do in Calgary?
Yeah, we saw Sharp and Gondek. Their first thing in this council term was declaring the climate emergency, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm for things to help the environment, drive efficiencies, but spending so much time going after plastic straws, all the performative stuff, that is so outside the scope of what we're expecting from our local government. And municipal
Mm-hmm.
government is the level closest to the people. It should be about delivering the fundamentals that we all depend on and to be able to shape the kind of city we want to leave for the next generation. So the problem today isn't so much the amount that City Hall does, but it
Mm-hmm.
spends too much on the wrong things and not enough in the right areas. So I think we need to be responsible with taxpayer dollars. We got to focus on the fundamentals, which are safety, it's affordability, and then we can build a Calgary that works better. And as an example, like we have the highest leakage rate of any major city in Canada. So
Yeah.
25% of the water that's produced in our water treatment plants is lost due to the aging nature of the wooden pipes, lead pipes, asbestos pipes. So we still got to fix this stuff. And if we were to actually fix those pipes, we could reduce the rates that Calgarians pay by 25% or more. So
Mm-hmm.
again, that's the difference between simply spending money and investing it. There's a lot
Yeah.
of folks who say any type of government spending is investment. No, it's not. It's spending money unless there's a return on investment. And myself having been a CEO reporting to a board, my board was happy to spend the money if there was an actual rock solid return on investment. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the focus that I'm going to bring as mayor to really drill into us, making sure that we're investing in areas where we can reduce the long-term costs for Calgarians.
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about some of that infrastructure, especially what happened last year with the water main break and Calgarians experiencing, the crisis that it became. What are your thoughts on how that was managed? Everything from risk management to communications seemed really murky to many Calgarians, and we were looking for a little bit more leadership.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and while Sharp and Gondek were ignoring the water mains, I was working with the provincial government to build a new flood mitigation project on the Bow River to help protect Calgary in the event of another flood. And the Bearspaw rupture really shows what happens when essential infrastructure is neglected.
Mm-hmm.
When I was on council, I raised serious concerns about the state of our pipes and the risks of deferring that maintenance. And this council chose to prioritize other things like the Sharp Gondek Arena deal instead of fixing what actually keeps our city running. So again, we're now losing about 25% of the water we produce. And as mayor, I'll put the basics first, ensuring the adequate inspections, repairs, and upgrades happen before the failures do.
And especially when we're looking at things like the blanket rezoning policy, where we're seeing densification in areas where the infrastructure might not match up, it's a real concern. And so, how do you foresee that being translated into communications with the public a little bit better in terms of, you know, infrastructure in general and what that means for them?
Yeah, so my housing plan calls for focusing the development and infrastructure to happen uh, close, or rather, it focuses the housing to happen where the services and infrastructure can support it. And
Hmm.
right now, we're seeing with both Sharp and Gondek two extremes, right? With Gondek, you see her position is essentially, uh, in order for us to build needed houses, we need to ignore the community. And for Sharp, she says, for us to listen to the community, that means we can't build anything anywhere. The truth
Hmm.
is, we need to have a much more targeted approach.
Hmm.
So this one size fits all zoning approach, it doesn't respect the character of existing communities. It hasn't delivered the certainty or affordability that Calgarians were promised. And it's not zoning alone that builds housing. It's partnerships, it's
Hmm.
infrastructure, it's thoughtful planning, it's the private sector. So my housing plan calls for a targeted plan to fix housing, to focus the density and development and to happen in the areas where the services and infrastructure can best support it.
And so, what do you intend to do with regards to the blanket rezoning policy if you become mayor?
Well, I'm committed to repealing the blanket rezoning, but
Mhm.
we need to make it easier to build housing in the areas where the services and infrastructure can support it. So I'm committed to reinstating the land use bylaw as it was prior to the adoption of the blanket rezoning, and then
Mhm.
moving forward through a local area plan process to community by community work to build support, build confidence in the private sector, so we still build the needed housing because
Mhm.
our next mayor is going to be here to welcome the 2 millionth Calgarian. As exciting as that is, one day soon we're going to overtake Montreal, even, right? So we have to continue to build. We have to continue to have the housing, and it should be as much of a market approach as possible.
And so, how do you intend to reestablish trust with Calgarians with regards to big policies like the blanket rezoning policy in the future, as they don't feel like they were heard or listened to, even with such a turnout and such a vocalization of opposition? City council still moved ahead, and so, you know, we really need to look at how to rebuild trust. And how would you do that with the public?
Yeah, so I believe in just answering the phone, right? I believe in showing up. And over the course of when I was a city councilor, I always kept my promises. You know, I wasn't perfect, but every month at least I would report in a monthly meeting to all of my constituents. We would book a church basement or a school gym, stuff like that. And over the course of 4 years, we held 50 town hall meetings. So this wasn't people having to come to City Hall. It was me coming out in the community to be able to listen and learn. I want to be able to take the wisdom, the expertise that exists out there in the nonprofit sector, in the private sector, think tanks, community leaders, everyone to be able to advocate for that. And I'm at a point in my life where I don't have to be the smartest person in the room. I want to be able to champion the great work that's being done out there, and partially how I can serve Calgarians the best is also being an independent. So not being too bogged down into the party politics and actually being practical in terms of what the evidence suggests we should do, rather than say a purely ideological or partisan approach.
Hmm. And with the blanket rezoning, so a year in now, and City Council has stated that it is viewing it as somewhat a success, as there's been 1,500 new units created. Do you think that that's a good way of evaluating a policy like this, simply the number of units created, or is there another way we should be looking at this?
Well, I think about in my case, Glamorgan, where I live in Southwest Calgary, and it's kind of ground zero, where you have $600,000 bungalows being torn down, being replaced with $750,000 luxury condos. And for me, housing that's affordable, or affordable housing, it means that Calgarians, whether you're a senior, family, young person starting out, that you can find a safe, stable home without being priced out of the city. So the city needs to do more to keep the overall cost of housing under control. We need to tackle red tape. We need to ensure adequate supply. We need to partner with nonprofits. And we also need to make sure that that growth actually comes with the infrastructure. Think roads, schools, transit, that makes communities livable. So that's really what my housing plan is about, addressing this directly by opening up more opportunities for competition and choice.
Awesome. And you mentioned earlier the arena deal, and that kind of has stuck in my mind and leads me to my next question, which is about the big projects, the 4 big projects that City Council has undertaken or committed to, even though they were advised by the city's CFO that it was not a sustainable choice and that it was a significant financial risk to take on more than one. What are your thoughts on that and how that was managed?
Oh gosh, I'm not opposed to a new rink. Like I love the Flames. I'm a big sports fan generally, and even stuff like the BMO Center, really beautiful. But we have to do this in a responsible way. Like, how do you have $1 billion in taxpayer subsidy via the various slush funds for the arena, but you don't have $1 billion to fix the pipes so that every single Calgarian can have access to safe, clean drinking water, right? So it's more of a question of priorities. And to have the taxpayer on the hook for about 85% of the upfront cost of the Sharp Gondek Arena deal, in order for 100% of the proceeds, naming rights, everything else go to the Flames, is just ridiculous. So again, we need to have much stronger financial responsibility so that we can focus on those fundamentals that are within the municipal mandate. So we can have all of those nice things, but we need to be smarter too, so that we can walk and chew bubble gum at the same time.
And so if you're mayor and you're forced to prioritize one of these 4 projects, so the arena deal, the BMO expansion, the Foothills Fieldhouse, and the Arts Commons transformation, which of those 4 would you prioritize?
Well, they're all proceeding, right? I'm not running to like revisit any of those deals. Like obviously I can encourage Calgarians to hold Sharp and Gondek accountable for the financial mismanagement that they've presided over. But I'm not looking to revise those deals or to rehash it. In Calgary, a handshake means something, so we're proceeding. But again, they shouldn't get a fair ride or on accountability for that.
And then let's chat about the Green Line. That's another one that is, a head scratcher for many Calgarians, where we see, costs continually increasing. The expected ridership or the amount of Calgarians that are expected to be served is continually seeming to decrease, as is the track length. And so it's really a question now to Calgarians of, is it even going to happen? And if so, is it going to cost, 10 times what it was proposed to do? And so what are your thoughts on how the Green Line LRT saga has kind of unfolded in the last few years?
Yeah, it's really become a cautionary tale, like over budget, delayed, scaled back significantly from what was originally promised. So I'm committed to working with the province to build it in a way that delivers real value for Calgarians. At that same time, I want to see more system-wide improvements. I want to see an airport LRT connection, stronger bus rapid transit, upgrades to the existing network, and also continued support for the low-income transit pass. So the lesson from the Green Line is really that future mega projects, they have to start with realistic budgets and timelines, and they have to be delivered with transparency and accountability so that Calgarians actually get the results that they're promised.
And so on mega projects like this, where we are so intertwined with the province, how do you think that risks and costs should be shared between the levels of government?
Well, I think we need a better relationship generally. I was recently CEO out at a provincial park, Limo Ranch, and we worked quite closely with the province, and we had an issue with them where they were considering tearing up the contracts that allowed for the park to be protected as a provincial park in favor of a new flood mitigation project. So obviously we were not happy with that. We had to assert ourselves, but we came to the table to try to build an off-ramp, to find a way that we could deliver for the province what they wanted while we could also get what we wanted too. So we built a coalition of conservatives and progressives, grassroots and business leaders, ranchers and environmentalists, and we found an alternative. So we found a location where a new dam could be built without destroying the park. And it ended up, everyone got it what they want. So you start from a position of strength. You have to be able to assert yourself, but Calgary's next mayor is going to have to work with both a Liberal Prime Minister and a Conservative Premier to get things done. And that's what I'm committed to do.
And so how do you see that relationship playing out? Like, how do you rebuild trust? Because it's been really shattered, or at least it seems like it to the average person when we're looking at how the previous mayor or the sitting mayor has managed the relationship with specifically the provincial level.
Yeah, I think it comes from even on public safety, right? It comes from a point of recognition of shared responsibility. A lot
Mhm.
of the issues that we're going to need to do to address Calgary's safety and downtown issues come from sentencing and bail reform. So we're going to need help at the provincial and federal level to be able to tighten up some legislation around that. I also think that just in terms of negotiations and any kind of relationship, really, you have to be willing to come to the table and work toward an outcome that allows the other person to look good too, right? You
Mhm.
can't just have the constant fights that for me to win, you have to lose. That's not how life works. It's very rare that you actually have such zero sum interactions like that. The reality, though, is that this mayor has not been able to come to the table in a way that could drive an outcome for both parties, right?
Mhm.
You got to be able to speak up for yourself. You got to be able to assert yourself on behalf of Calgarians, but you also have to be able to work toward a win also for the other party, and that's not what we've seen. So the Glenville Ranch example is one where I didn't back down. I fought for what I believed in. I fought with conviction, and we found a way that we could do that and win, but also find a win for the other party, and that's what I'd be looking for as well.
Mhm, mhm. And so you've mentioned safety and transit safety a couple of times as well, and lots of Calgarians are really struggling with the idea of even taking transit with the incidents that we are continually seeing in the news or even experiencing on the ground. What are your thoughts on how City Council is managing the transit strategy currently?
Well, there is no strategy. It hasn't worked. And while Sharp and Gondek were cutting safety investments, cutting mental health funding, I was working on the front lines as a nonprofit board director for the Alex, working on the front lines with social sector agencies to address these issues. And Calgary's current approach to transit safety, it hasn't worked. Too many people feel unsafe, and it's driving people off the system, making the
Mhm,
system even more expensive to operate. So it's a
mhm,
it's a negative feedback loop. So my plan for transit safety as well as for the downtown is comprehensive. So I begin with a full audit of every C train stop to see location by location what's working, what isn't. I'm open to considering fare gates.
mhm,
For me, the bigger priority is to properly fund both enforcement and prevention. So think things like more visible security, stronger action on social disorder, and also design changes that make the system more safe and welcoming. So we need tailored solutions for each station if we want to restore trust and confidence in it. And we also need to address some of the root issues. So we know that it's about 50 to 100 individuals who are responsible for the vast majority, like 80%, vast majority of repeat violent attacks on people, on property. We need to crack down on those repeat violent offenders. Calgary is now the only major North American city without a downtown police station, thanks to Sharp and Gondek. We need to reopen that station. We
mhm,
need to invest in transit officers and police officers, but we can't stop there. We also have to address the prevention. So what we've seen on this council is they've been kind of stuck. They've been pitting enforcement versus compassion and saying that it has to be all or one or the other, when the
mhm,
truth is it has to be both. And that's what the path forward has to be.
mhm, mhm. And so, like, we've seen that some of the crime stats are showing that some crime is going down, but yet folks still feel very unsafe, or the perception is still there that it's unsafe, even if some of the stats are showing that things in certain areas might be improving. And so, how much weight should we have on the perception of safety versus actual crime statistics of safety?
Well, if you don't feel safe, you're unsafe, right? That's the thing. And I'd also, as a numbers guy, I'd also be quite reluctant to um, go too deep into those numbers, because we're also seeing a lot of underreporting, right? When
Yeah.
there's folks who see a lot of stuff, it's the same thing they've seen every day for the last year, 2 years, 3 years, and they're just not reporting, right? So
Mhm.
uh, the the data could be telling a certain story that's very different from the actual reality, let alone the perception. So I think listening to Calgarians, it's very clear. We need to fund the enforcement. We need to ensure that we have that presence, we right size the pop to cop ratio as Calgary continues to grow. But we can't stop there. We need to fund the prevention. And we also need to fund the support for the first responders themselves. Like right now, we have upwards of 20% of the Calgary Police Services sidelined due to injury, mental health challenges, others. We need to be able to address a lot of the concerns that the CPS has, but also the fire department. This is such a multifaceted issue. We got to be there for our first responders so that they're able to give us their best work too.
Absolutely. And concerns about transit safety kind of flows to concerns about just general safety, especially with regards to the downtown core. And so we've seen year after year, there's quite the debate surrounding the supervised consumption site in downtown Calgary. Some are very, supportive of it being closed completely. Some would like to see it relocated, and others are undecided. What are your thoughts on the supervised consumption site as it currently stands?
Well, I was the city councilor for the area in the Beltline around the Schumschumer, and it was clear 7 years ago plus that it wasn't working for the local residents. And so it's clear to me that the site in its current location hasn't worked for either the community or for those it was meant to help. The province, however, has made clear that any request to close it at that location will just result in moving it elsewhere. So I want to focus on getting to the root of the issue rather than asking some other neighborhood to take on the problem instead of the Beltline, right? Just to move it to some other neighborhood doesn't make a lot of sense to me. So I want to focus on getting to the root of the issue. So that means cracking down, as mentioned, on the most dangerous repeat violent offenders, those who exploit our vulnerable people, while at the same time making sure that treatment, recovery, housing, mental health supports are available. So we need that balanced approach, compassion for those struggling with addiction, but also accountability for those who are making downtown unsafe.
And so with the province having such an active role or needing to be the one leading a lot of the initiative, what role do you see the city playing, to support what the province is doing, but also being a leader in and of itself?
Yeah, and the downtown safety leadership table has a number of great recommendations, and I think that we need to bring together everybody involved in this. It's residents, it's business groups, it's nonprofits, it's the first responders, various agencies. We can't afford to go it alone. Obviously, what happens inside the Schumschumer is within provincial control, but the outside, the public environment, largely municipal responsibility. But we can't afford any longer just the finger pointing. You can't just point to this and say it's somebody else's problem. It's a joint responsibility. The mayor, prime minister, and premier all need to work together on these issues so that we can solve it here in Calgary. It absolutely can be solved if we have that joint responsibility and that joint accountability.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. And so as mayor, you're elected to serve all of Calgary and all Calgarians, but there will inevitably be decisions that make it so one group is worse off, and one group is better off. How do you manage that? Like, how do you propose to make those decisions? Is it, where the need is greatest or where the benefit will be the greatest, as those sometimes are at odds?
Well, a couple of things. So I look at my housing plan, for example, to repeal the blanket rezoning. From a certain perspective, that could be seen as bringing in more red tape for some businesses who benefit from the current approach, the blanket model. So my housing plan calls for repealing the blanket rezoning, but finding other ways that we can reduce the per door cost for development generally. And I think it also involves taking less of a partisan approach. What we see at the provincial level, the federal level is it sort of is the case for one side to gain something, another side has to lose. Or at the municipal level, the local level, the community level, that doesn't really hold water. So I'm really focused on running as an independent to be able to keep the party politics out of city council, just to be focused on the pragmatism, the practicality, so that we can try to find compromise in a way that actually serves everybody. It's an unfortunate case where some people may feel like it's only zero sum, but leadership means trying to find a way that as many people as possible get what they want. Obviously, it can't be all things to all people. That's why my platform is really focused on safety, affordability, and the things within city council control. But I think by keeping the practicality, the independence, we can actually focus on what the evidence says rather than just a pre-existing ideological or partisan bent.
And what if the outcome would have really big impacts for one ward versus another? Like, how would you kind of make your decisions or base your decisions in terms of where the need is the greatest, essentially? Not necessarily with housing, but kind of overall.
I recall this happened at least a couple times when I was a city councilor, and my job was to advocate for my residents, but my residents also were really intelligent. We're really engaged. Like I remember in Southwest Calgary, there's this 14th Street bus project where local residents were kind of challenging whether the value was there compared to investing it elsewhere. I ultimately said that this project in Southwest Calgary should not be built, so that the funds could be built in Northeast Calgary instead, on 52nd Street instead of 14th Street. I went to my residents and I made the case and I said, I get it. My job, theoretically, as your councilor, is to try to pork barrel and get as much money funneled into my ward as possible. But I reported to my residents and I said, hey, there's an opportunity here to invest this money elsewhere. In this case, that project was about the same amount of money as it would have cost to build an LRT connection to the airport. And I looked at that link as something that wouldn't just benefit my residents, but the overall city. And to my constituents' credit, they heard that argument and they said, okay, we understand that you have to balance the needs of the city overall. So I think you got to make the case, right? You can't just assume that your constituents, if you're at the ward level, just want you to focus on wasteful spending in areas that aren't efficient, even if it may benefit themselves. As Calgarians, I think we all really give a damn. We want a city that functions. We want every single Calgarian to feel safe. We ever want taxes to be affordable everywhere. So it's a balancing act, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that if the transparency is there, the accountability is there, it helps people understand a decision. Whereas in previous decisions or previous policy moves, that hasn't been the case, and so it's left people feeling left out of big decisions that impact them. And so, Jeromy, this has been quite an interesting conversation, and I know you've mentioned it, but I'll explicitly ask it. This is the first time that we're seeing the political parties at the municipal level. Are you yourself associated or affiliated with any of those parties that are currently at the municipal level?
No, I'm running as an independent for a couple of reasons. So imagine what it would be like if you're a new mayor and you were elected as part of a political party. You all of a sudden you're working with 14 colleagues and you're on the record of having worked for the last year and spending millions to make sure that they lost, right? That just poisons the relationship from the get-go. So myself, running as an independent, I get to be that peacemaker. I get to rise above the noise and actually work with my colleagues to get things done. But that said, just because you say you're independent doesn't mean that you get a free pass on transparency in terms of what you stand for. I would describe myself as old school PC, which used to mean socially liberal, fiscally responsible. I'm less inclined to use those kinds of labels now, as I find alignment with a lot of people who identify across the political spectrum. I don't really relate to the provincial and federal parties. I believe government should be responsible with tax dollars because that's what's required for public trust. And I think we also need to be open-minded and compassionate in how government treats people. That said, government can't be all things to all people. And I think that balance doesn't really exist in today's polarized party system. So I don't see myself in the provincial or federal parties. Some spend way too freely on the wrong things. Others divide people on social issues. And that's why I'm running municipally as an independent. And it's why I've chosen to do so, to put Calgary first rather than being tied to anyone's partisan agenda.
Well, Jeromy, thank you so very much for taking the time to chat with us today. I've really enjoyed hearing your perspectives on the issues we've talked about. And if there's one thing to leave with our viewers today, what would you hope to leave behind with them?
Well, we're in the final days here. We got moments to go until the next election. It hasn't been done in the last 45 years to defeat a sitting mayor. All the polling, the fundraising, the numbers have shown that there's only one campaign, which is ours, which is in the position to be able to do so. So my appeal to Calgarians is to support our vision for a safer, more affordable city. I'm the only one in this race who can do what hasn't been done in 45 years, to prevent a political party takeover of city council, to change the direction of city hall, and to deliver on the promise of Calgary to be safe, affordable, and opportunity rich. So I'm going to be working hard in these final days to earn your support. And I've always kept my promises, whether it's declining the city council golden pension, whether it's walking, crawling, bleeding for 172 days across North America from Mexico home to Calgary. I've made mistakes. I've learned from them. I've led through challenge and change, and I am ready to be your next mayor.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time today. And to our viewers, thank you for tuning in. And please stay engaged, stay informed, and get out there and vote. We really need to make sure that our voices are heard. Voter turnout can be quite dismal at the municipal level, and we definitely would love to see that higher this year. So thank you very much. And thank you again, Jeromy. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you so much.